doing another video today about ghosts because, as you know, Jane and I have been following some of the ghost stories of places associated with Henry VIII and his 6 wives. Now, inevitably, we end up at one of the most important haunted places on Earth, which is the Hampton Court Palace. And there's believed to be about 11 ghosts that haunt this place. But let me just tell you a little bit about Hampton Court, and also I'm going to tell you at the end a little bit about some of my views about evil ghosts and what they mean, because people have asked about this a lot in the comments and I think it needs explaining a bit. Okay, let's tell you a little bit about Hampton Court. Hampton Court Palace, to be precise, and it's near London. It's in Richmond upon Thames, and it was originally built in 1515 for Cardinal Thomas Wolsey. And he was a favourite of King Henry VIII. But in 1529, as kind of Wolsey fell from power, Henry VIII, of course, grabbed the palace like he did with so much of England. And he took all the royal stuff, you know, Glastonbury burnt down and all the rest of it, if you follow your history. But Hampton Court was one of those places, was built for Wolsey, but taken over by Henry VIII. And together with the other one, which is at St James's Palace, is one of the only 2 surviving palaces out of the many that was owned by Henry VIII. So that's the main person there, and the ghosts of Henry VIII, of course, are supposed to, the wives particularly, are supposed to haunt this place, but I'll tell you about that in a minute. But in the next century, King William III did a massive rebuild and expanded the whole thing, and it destroyed a lot of what was originally there. Much of the Tudor palace that was intended originally to rival Versailles, the work for that was ceased in 1694, but left the palace in sort of 2 parts really, and very different styles. One was sort of like in the old Tudor style, and the other was in the Baroque style. So we got 2 lots of style of architecture there. So it is an absolutely fascinating place to look around, and it's absolutely steeped in the vibrations of history. And I'm going to tell you now a little bit about some of the ghosts that are supposed to haunt this place. Now, like I said, there's supposed to be at least 11 ghosts that are supposed to haunt Hampton Court. The most famous is Catherine Howard. Now, she's believed to frequent the haunted gallery, where she was dragged back, apparently screaming to her rooms while under house arrest. And she was, of course, accused of committing adultery by Henry VIII. And her ghost is now called the Screaming Lady, Others are there too. Anne Boleyn, we noticed, was mentioned a number of times in areas of Hampton Court as well. But there's another one actually, less known perhaps, is a woman called Sybil Penn. Sybil Penn, and she's this is supposed to be sightings of Dame Sybil Penn. She was a servant to 4 Tudor monarchs, and she began around about 1829 when the church at nearby Hampton was rebuilt and her impressive tomb was moved. And since then, Sybil's ghost is known as the Grey Lady of Hampton Court Palace. The moving of the tomb is supposed to have awoken her spirit and caused her to haunt the place. And then there, of course, is Skeletor. This has recently been seen, a great name that, isn't it? Skeletor. And it's the name that was given to a ghostly figure that appeared on CCTV cameras at Hampton Court Palace in October 2003. I'll put a picture up of it for you here. Now, if we can look at that, and we can, of course, question whether that is a ghost or not, but whatever. But I think some of the most interesting stories at Hampton Court are the ones told by the people that work there.
I haven't seen one, but through here is the bathroom that Caroline used, and there have been several occasions when we've smelt perfume or else rose-scented bath water or something similar. And I was in here not long ago, but it happened again. There were 2 women with me. It does tend to happen to women more often than men for some reason. And they smelt it and they said, "Wow, that's frankincense." That's not been used since 1737. There's no reason for it to be there, but it does happen. So I can't say that I've seen a ghost, but I have smelled one.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I've had a couple.
But women do pick up these things much more readily. I've not forgotten the Canadian girl who wouldn't walk into a Cumberland. She was convinced there was something evil. Just walked in the door and just stopped dead. Said, "Are there evil spirits here?" I went into full charming Warden mode because I suspected a panic might be on the cards. I said, well, Henry VIII used to live here, Duke of Cumberland, etc. She saw through it and said, no, there's something evil. And nothing I could say would get her to walk into that room.
Wow, those Canadians.
Yeah, what the
Well, we don't want to slag them off. They provided a nice new floor for the kings. But then no lack of pine trees there.
Good little story, that one. I'm glad I managed to capture it, and the man said that we could put it on to YouTube here. So, yeah, a lot of people actually sense ghosts through the sense of smell. That's what us psychics might call a psychic breeze, you know, and it's perhaps one of the most common ways that you sense a ghost. You know, I've known people, like when my father died, the room filled with the scent that, you know, the moment he died, the room filled with the sense of of flowers and things like this. It was really strange, you know. And then when I've spoken to other friends when they've died, one who used to love toast, there was a smell of burnt toast in the room, you know. So, you know, we get these psychic breezes, as psychics call it. But now you notice that there was a lot of talk there at the end, or a little bit, about that woman that was saying that she sensed a sense of evil and there's an evil spirit around here. And let's face it, and that skeletal business, you know, I talked about earlier, there's all this idea that there's this evil spirits, you know, that can threaten us and maybe even take us over and possess us, you know. And we get a lot of this talked about in the movies, don't we? I mean, there's so much of it. It gets and we've all basically fallen for the same old misconceptions, because what that's really playing into, you know, is our own inner fears. You know, if you think about it in terms of dreams. First of all, when you dream about a ghost or dying and so forth, these things are usually things pushing themselves upon us from our unconscious mind, repressed things, fears we have, fears of death, for example, or fears about things that happen to us in our lives. You know, the unconscious content of the unconscious mind comes up, wells up into consciousness, and appears as something ephemeral, like a ghost. We don't know quite what this fear is, but it appears like a ghost, you know. So there's a big psychological reason why we have this thing about ghosts and spirits. It's appealing to something deep in our unconscious minds. But then, you know, okay, but when people say, oh, these are evil ghosts around and all this sort of business, I have to ask myself, what do we mean by evil, you know, and sin, which is the kind of linked in very closely with this. Now, I understand the world, and I think a lot of you might feel the same, that everything is divine. You know, we are all part of the one divine consciousness, okay? Now, if we say that and we understand that to be true, I mean, if you meditate deeply, you might realise it's a reality, okay? But so what's this sin business? You know, can a divine being, a divine soul that we are all part of the great oneness of existence, can that possibly be corrupted to a point that it would be pure evil and nothing more? It can't. Sin and wickedness and evil are just actions that people take, but they kind of act as a veil. All they can do is cloak the divinity within us and darken the light, and like putting a veil over a lamp until it goes dark, but the lamp's still glowing inside, because all of us are divine beings. And I think that's quite simply it. And I think, you know, I mean, all these religions, I mean, the ones that sort of start going on about evil and all the rest of it, I have to question that, you know, because really the objective of religion should be to bring us to our divine consciousness, to our divine understanding of the world, not to take us off on some propaganda path to say that if you don't believe in this particular version of our religion, then you're going to burn in hell and and it's evil to do this. You know, so it's playing on fear in people's unconscious mind. So we're all divine beings, so we should have no fear whatsoever. Have no fear of the idea of evil and sin and all the rest of it. Obviously, I'm not saying that you should go out and do bad things, because that's just going to push you away from the divine nature that you have, that is pure bliss, happiness and light, you know. So that's what evil is. It pushes you away from the light. Goodness brings you towards it, and that should be the objective of all religions, and actually at heart is the objective of all religions. It's just we mess around with these things. So my understanding is that I think when people talk about evil ghosts, think, what do you mean by evil? What do you mean by somebody that's sinned and stuck in some limbo world or so forth? You know, it's a huge question. But I've only just glanced at here really, so if you want to add some comments about it in the comments lines, I'm sure it'll be interesting. Although goodness knows what some of you will say. But you know, as far as I understand, you know, we're all divine beings. There's no such thing as evil. You know, it's a misconception. It's just an action. It's like negative karma that we put upon ourselves that we can rid ourselves of. All we have to do is understand our divine nature. Nothing can touch us if we do that. Jane and I now do our spiritual work for our foundation. All the profits that come from things like our conferences and theatres and workshops and all those exciting things now go into this foundation, which ultimately has the long-term plan of building centres in the UK and maybe around the world one day. But meanwhile, we've been doing a lot of direct spiritual work with it. We've been going out, feeding people in India, giving to the destitute, giving to beggars. We've helped feed schools, helped orphanages, and we've even given cows to older people that have no other form of income. So mediumship can change your life, but it can also help people directly in the world. So go to the links at the end and find out all about what Jane and I are trying to do. And you can do a lot just by sharing these videos on social media. Help us get the word out. Help us to do something really good in this world. Click on this picture of me to subscribe to our channel and see all of our latest videos as soon as they're published. Or click on this next video for more of our stuff.